Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Japan and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel once before. Now these guys are a very new addition to the Japanese beer scene, but they've built up a good reputation for themselves in that very short span of time, and I would say that this brewery are probably best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, but I understand that they are going to try and brew a few different styles as time goes on, so we'll need to keep an eye on that. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I have had from this brewery before, albeit this one is considerably more amped up, if we can call it that, and it is somewhat of a special occasion beer for these guys as well, so I thought this is one that we really need to do a review of actually. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to a little place called Nagakuta in Aichi Prefecture, which is a bit to the north of me here in Osaka, very close to Nagoya, and that means that we're going to have a look at my second beer from Totopia Brewery. So this particular beer is called One-Phobia. It comes in at 10% ABV, and this one is a New England hazy Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA. And as the name suggests, this is the one that they brewed for their first anniversary. So yeah, this was one that I thought, you know, we really need to review this while the opportunity is there. But this is yet another beer that I picked up at Liquor Shop Asahiya in Taishibashi Aichi here in Osaka, who pretty much supply all of the Japanese beers that I review for you here on the channel. A lovely little shop run by Koji and his daughter Rika. I'll put the link to their Facebook page in the video description below, so you can follow them and keep up to date with all the really interesting Japanese craft beer releases. And do go and check them out if you find yourself here in Osaka. But yeah, I've always got some really good stuff from these guys, and this is one that they really recommended for me actually, especially when it's a special occasion beer such as this one. But let's crack on then and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. This is one of only a few New England triple IPAs that I've had from Japan as well, which is another exciting point. But as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Totopia Brewery before, and we will no doubt add some more to that list as time goes on. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember that you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things, and we are adding quite a little bit to that at the moment while I'm here. And we will continue to do so as you know, just as time goes on. I keep saying that in this video, as time goes on. But yeah, do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. So yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Totopia Brewery. So Totopia Brewery, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Nagakuta, which is just to the east of Nagoya City, one of the big major cities in Japan. I think that's like the fourth largest or something like that. But the brewery was founded back in 2022, and it's the latest venture of the team behind Beer Pub at Brick Lane in Nagoya, which is a very well-known beer spot. But Beer Pub Brick Lane was founded back in 2014 by Junior Morita and his wife Akiko, along with 3 friends, and it's become a really well-known kind of craft beer and burger spot in that big city. But the following year they started the Nagoya Craft Beer Map, and they started to do market research in the US in order to form their own import company, which began importing American craft beers to Japan back in 2017. But they then opened their own beer shop, which is known as Used Like New Beer, in 2018, and it's also got a kind of sandwich side to it as well, so it's a craft beer and sandwich shop, which is pretty interesting and quite unique, and you'll find little things like this in the Japanese beer scene. But at this point, they wanted to get into brewing their own beer, so they started planning to form their own brewery company, and the name Totopia was chosen as a combination of the Japanese word toto, meaning like precious, valuable or revered, and utopia, so Totopia. You find that quite a lot in Japan as well. A lot of business names can be a little bit weird because they're combining Japanese and English words. But the location of the brewery had originally been decided as Seto City, but this had to be changed suddenly, and they found their current plot of land, which is 600 square metres, in Nagakuta, which is to the east of the central part of Nagoya, as I mentioned earlier, and the brewery released their first beers during the second half of 2022, and they plan to focus on using local ingredients in their beers as well as harvesting their own hops. And there's quite a few breweries doing this in Japan these days, which is pretty cool. And you know, this is a kind of mentality, I think, that's taken from Japanese produce as a whole. You see sake breweries doing the same thing. But as of October 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 60 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and like I mentioned earlier, the majority of their beers seem to be different kinds of IPAs, but I have seen one or two other things on the Liquor Shop Asahiya page from these guys as well. So we need to try a few different styles from these guys as we do more reviews on the channel too. But that is everything I can really tell you about Totopia Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself. So as you can see, this one is yet another half-litre can, which is becoming more and more popular among craft brewers here in Japan, and you know, more power to them. It's either 375 millilitres that you'll get over here, or the bigger half litres, and the half litres are a little bit more expensive. But like we mentioned earlier, this beer is called One-Phobia. It comes in at 10% ABV. It's a New England Hazy, Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA. And the hops used in this one are Sabro, Citra and Nelson Sauvin. A few different things here. So there's Sabro Incognito, Citra and Citra Cryo, Nelson Sauvin CGX, which I'm not sure what that is. I tried to search that earlier, but it wouldn't really come up when I was looking for it. And then just regular pellet Nelson Sauvin. So Incognito and Cryo, as we know, are the oils, and they give you a really smooth green component, generally speaking. But yeah, we know all of these hops quite well. Sabro is about 14% alpha acid. It's American. It's got that kind of tangerine-y, mandarin-y orange to it, but also that distinctive kind of sort of coconutty note. Citra's about 14% alpha acid as well. American. Big kind of grapefruity notes, lots of kind of juicy mango, and then quite a strong lemon limey character in a New England IPA. And then Nelson Sauvin is the classic New Zealand hop, 16% alpha acid, and it gives you that big sort of white grapey gooseberry type note, white wine grapey gooseberry note. So yeah, a classic combination of hops in this one, and I think that's pretty fitting when it's their first anniversary beer, of course. But this is certainly the strongest beer that I've had from these guys so far, and one of the strongest IPAs that I've had in Japan, in fact. Yeah, the last beer I had from these guys was called Red Phobia, or was it White Phobia? I forget, but it was one of the two. And that was pretty nice. I'm sure that was like a 7%er or so, come to think of it. But yeah, let's crack this guy open and see what it's all about. This should be quite interesting. As I say, triple IPAs are not madly common in Japan. They do like a good barley wine and things over here, but yeah, the New England triple IPA seems to be a little bit of a new thing. It's only really, you know, West Coast brewing, probably Verteri as well, and one or two others that are probably doing triple IPAs. There's quite a few doubles about these days. But yeah, there are more and more breweries opening up, of course. But yeah, you can see that this beer has poured pretty much as you would expect of a New England IPA of any description. So I think we've got maybe about, yeah, maybe 2/3 to 75% of the beer out into the glass, and you can see that it's poured with just under a finger of a frothy, I would say, cream coloured head there. You can see there's kind of medium-sized bubbles sitting on the surface of the liquid, and the head just gradually gets more and more foamy. The further up that you go, there you can see my nice Mino beer glass there as well. But yeah, you can get a proper look at the foam in this one. So in terms of the colour of this beer, I'd say that this one's a really kind of rich, deep yellow. I wouldn't describe this beer as amber in the slightest. It's kind of a mango juice colour. I always like comparing the New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's just what their appearance reminds me of. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. That goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do, or any adjuncts you put into the beer, will affect the colour as well. But when it comes to IPAs, you don't often have to care about adjuncts unless you're talking about fruit IPAs. But the level of haze on this one, I have to say, is pretty much what you'd expect from a big 10% New England. It's not the soupiest and gloopiest one I've seen, but it's certainly one of the soupier and gloopier ones that I've seen in Japan for sure. So the level of haze in these New England IPAs depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. That can vary from brewery to brewery, and just beer to beer as well. But for a 10% New England, this is about right, to be honest with you. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation in this one. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the bottom of the glass there, a few little ones heading up toward the bottom of the head. But overall, it does look pretty nice, I have to say. So yeah, nothing else we really need to say about the appearance of this beer. Let's have a wee look at the aroma then, and see what this one is going to have in store for us. Yeah, that's pretty damn nice, I have to say. Yeah, I think this is going to be pretty solid actually. It gives you everything you'd want. You've got a nice kind of smooth creaminess to it. You've got a good little bit of just kind of fruity, juicy character in there, and the green component on this one isn't too kind of pungent actually. Now, as I've said in New England reviews before, for me there are 6 elements to think about when it comes to this style and the sort of malty, yeasty side of things. So you can have the more sort of farmhousey, yeasty leaning New England IPAs. You can get the kind of rye leaning, grainy side of it as well, and these two are a little bit more commonly found in American brewed New Englands. But then you've got wheaty, bitey character, oaty creaminess, barley malt bread, and also the sweeter side of things. So 6 elements to say. 6 elements, as I said, to think about when it comes to trying this particular style. And for me, this one comes across as really nicely balanced. It comes across as having a bit of wheat, a bit of oat, a good little bit of barley malt, and there's just a little touch of sweetness in there actually. So this one is giving you a little bit of a more rounded New England experience on the aroma at least. But it smells great. So let's just break that aroma down and describe it a bit more in depth for you, as we always like to do. So the backbone of this beer, you've got a little bit of a kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there. You do get a little element of a kind of, there's a little bit of a woodiness to it as well, some kind of crackery notes. So yeah, as I said, a little bit of woodiness, a little bit of a kind of crackery character as well. And yeah, you also have this you've got a lot of bready character coming out of this one too. So yeah, above the kind of crackery layer you can smell this lovely, fluffy, freshly baked white bread in there. Now the bready character does have a little bit of sweetness to it, and that makes me wonder, is it American malt that's being used in here? And you can smell at the back of the nose. You do get a little touch of wheaty bitiness out of this one, but you can smell that the wheat is sort of densifying the bready character in this beer. And I found when I was over in the States before coming here that the American grains are quite different in their characters to the European ones. And one of the main things I noticed was that the American wheat is a lot smoother than its European counterpart. So I do wonder if the wheat that's in this beer has been brought over from the States, and of course being where we are in Japan, Australian wheat might be another option for this one. But yes, certainly you can smell that little bit of wheaty bitiness in the back of the nose, but you can smell that thicker, more wheaty leaning white bread as well. There's definitely a nice little bit of oaty character in there too. OT character is always an interesting one to talk about when it comes to New England IPAs, because generally speaking, it can give you a good idea of how fresh your beer is. Essentially, the creamier the oats smell and taste, the fresher the beer is, the drier the oats are, the older the beer is. Not always the case, because I think American oats are a little touch drier than European oats, but that's something else entirely to talk about. But yeah, for me, this one, the oaty character in this beer has a good little bit of creaminess to it, but I think, again, the aroma makes me think it's American oats rather than European oats in here, which again makes sense because of geography. And the thing as well with this beer is that you don't get too much in the way of sweetness out of it. There is a little bit of that Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing going on. Maybe a little hint of like a McVitie's Digestive Biscuit. Probably some Golden Promise in here. That wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. But yeah, it's actually a very nicely balanced malty character that you're getting out of this one, to be honest. So gets a big thumbs up from me. Let's focus on the hoppy side of the beer then. So for me, the hoppy side of this beer is quite interesting, because the more that I smell it, the more dankness I get out of the beer. So the thing you have to remember with IPAs is there are 3 different kinds of hoppings that you can do. So you can do early addition hopping, which usually takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. That gives you mainly bitterness, but it gives you a deep, dank sort of flavour and aroma. You've got late addition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil normally. That gives you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma, and that's going to translate to like a kind of brighter, it's going to translate to a more brighter and floral kind of aroma and flavour, actually. But then dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete, is going to give you all flavour and aroma, and it's going to give you again that very bright green component rather than being deep and dank. West Coast IPAs tend to use all 3 types of hoppings, hence why they're a bit more bitter, whereas New England IPAs tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping, and you can tell straight away from the brightness of the green component in here that it is mainly late addition and dry hopping, but it also smells wetter too because of the cryo and the incognito that's in here, and we'll see that effect in the flavour, I'm sure, as well. But yeah, certainly with this one, you're getting a good little bit of, there's a little touch of earthiness to this one, not a lot, but you're getting this you're getting a little touch of the dankness out of the floral character, but a little bit of a kind of floral spicy sort of thing. It's quite wet as well. Then you've got a lovely bit of a kind of wet, freshly cut grass coming out of this beer too, which I think is really interesting. So yeah, wet, freshly cut grass, and just a little touch of zestiness there. But the fruity character in this beer is pretty much what you'd expect if you know these hops as well, and it's again very, very nicely balanced. So Citra for me in this beer is really showing its kind of softer side. There's a good little bit, there's a little touch of a grapefruity character in there. So yeah, a little touch of grapefruit, little touch of little bit of a kind of peachy sharpness in there as well, but not too much actually. Lots of kind of juicy or kind of passion fruit and mango and things in there. Definitely apricot as well. And then yeah, you can smell the Nelson Sauvin and the Sabro coming out of this one, because you've got that little bit of coconut in there, but then you've got that sort of gooseberry, white green grapey character that you'd expect of Nelson Sauvin. So the coconut from the Sabro and the white green grapey character from the Nelson Sauvin are going together quite well in this. But as I say, you have that big, you definitely have that big sort of tangerine, orangey sort of character coming out of this one as well. So it's great. It really is very, very nice. Yeah, aroma-wise, this beer is pretty awesome actually. I'm just curious to see how it's going to come out in the flavour. But as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But yeah, we're going to try this one now. So this is the One-Phobia, a 10% New England triple IPA. the first anniversary beer of Totopia Brewery, just outside of Nagoya in Aichi Prefecture here in Japan. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers, kanpai, and happy anniversary to Totopia. Ooh, that's really damn solid actually. That's a very good New England triple, I have to say that. These guys know what they're doing with this style. It has a different vibe to what I've had in Europe before, and also to what I had in America over the last kind of month or so. But that is really damn good. It feels a little bit more refined than I remember the first beer that I had from these guys, which makes sense because obviously with it being their first anniversary beer, they're going to put that little bit more effort into it. But also, you know, they'll be fully used to their equipment by now. They'll be kind of getting into a rhythm and things like that. This is really damn good actually. If memory serves me correctly, I think I paid about 1,500 yen for this one. So that is somewhere in the region of like 120 Swedish kroner, 12 euros, like 10 or 11 pounds sterling, something like that, like maybe $13 American, something like that. So craft beer in Japan is a bit pricier because of the barley imports and stuff like that, and the tax that's on it, which is strange considering that you can drink sake, which is stronger than beer, and it'll get you more drunk, but it costs less. But that's just how it is. Craft beer in Japan is that little bit more expensive, and 120 kroner for me, 12 euros. Yeah, it is a bit pricey for a New England IPA, but I certainly don't regret paying that for this one. This is really well done. So these guys, Totopia, as I say, there's a big improvement between this one and the last beer that I had from them. Not that the last beer was bad, but you know, you can feel this is just on another level from the last one that we had from them. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. As a first impression, it's a really very smooth, creamy, but still quite light New England triple IPA. Absolutely lovely. So one of the technical things to mention about these beers is that triple IPAs, from what I understand, they basically paleo IPA, double IPA and barley wine, these beers are all related to each other through their kind of hop to malt ratios. They're essentially a family of beers. Now my technical understanding is that a triple IPA basically uses the double IPA hop to malt ratio, but they put more malt in to give it the bigger booziness, and then they add the hops accordingly. But for me, a triple IPA is 10% and above, then 12% and above. You're really talking about a quadruple IPA, and there's ones that are higher than that as well. But this is great. Lovely, very smooth, kind of creamy IPA, quite well balanced between the barley, the wheat and the oats for sure. But let's just break this beer down then and describe the flavour more in depth for you, as we always do. So middle third of the palate. The backbone of this beer, as you would expect, is that lovely, smooth, white bready bread crust. As you go further into the aftertaste, you can feel the kind of lightness there. It's like a fresh kind of hedgehog roll, like the bread crust off of that, and that lingers there into the aftertaste. If you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you can feel there's a nice little bit of kind of woody character in there, and again that lingers and comes out into the aftertaste too. Then you have a nice sort of cream crackery layer sitting above that, and these kind of base notes, if you can call them that, they really just show themselves more and more the further into the aftertaste that you go, and it's absolutely lovely. But on top of that, you start to get the bready notes out of the beer, so you can feel the barley malt bread in there, and the bread actually has a wee bit of crispness to it, but also a little bit of sweetness. I'd love to see what the malt bill on this beer actually is, because it does kind of taste as if it's a mix of German and American malt that's in here, because you get the crispness of the European crystals, but there's also a wee bit of the kind of slightly more sweet character of the American malts. So yeah, definitely a kind of fluffier white bready layer there. You might be possible to say there's a slightly sweeter brown bready layer underneath that. So yeah, maybe brown bread, white bread, and then you can feel a more dense white bready character just sitting on top of that, and that's the wheaty elements coming out of the beer. So yeah, the more that you drink of this beer, actually, I think you start to get more wheaty character out of it, because it just has that little bit of kind of bite and snap to it. So yeah, I think this one maybe, yeah, the more that I drink of it, I'm getting more wheaty character out of it. It just gives you that little bit of bite, which is very nice. So yeah, you've got the slightly more dense white bready wheaty layer in there, and then you've got the oats kind of sitting above that. So the oaty side of this beer I find really interesting, because when you go down the middle line of your palate there, you can feel that more creamy, dense, smooth oaty character there. But as you move further out toward the edges of the middle of your palate, you can feel you've got a nice sort of dryness from the oats as well. I do wonder, maybe it's American oats that are in here. I really don't know how big the oat or wheat production is in Japan these days. But yeah, barley. They produce mainly rice here, of course. That's kind of how it goes. But yeah, the way the malty character in this beer goes together is really, really nicely done. Within the kind of oaty character as well, you get a little bit of this like fruity, sherbety kind of character that you can get, and that's from the yeast. It reminds me of a sweet back home in Scotland called Parma Violets, and it's quite subtle actually in this one, but you do just get a little bit of that coming out of the yeast of this beer. The further into the aftertaste that you go as well. Now, the oaty character, I think we covered the oaty character, but if you go to the dead centre of that middle part of your palate, you've got this lovely, very smooth, you've got that lovely sort of smooth Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing, and that is of course the concentration of the alcohol in this beer. You can feel that in the dead centre of your palate, which is really nice. So you've got that boozy Werther's Original sweet caramelly character in the middle. Then as you move further out from that, yeah, lovely little bit of a more almost very slightly like fudgy type note out of it. And then as you move toward the edges of that middle third of your palate, yeah, it's a McVitie's digestive biscuit. There's a little bit of that biscuity character coming out of this one. But yeah, I think that covers everything we need to say about the middle third of your palate. So let's go to the back third of the palate. Do remember that general trend with your palate though, that sweeter flavours come out further forward, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back, and generally speaking you'll get similar flavours on the back third of your palate to the middle third, just at different intensities. So that border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of kind of bready build up in there. So you can feel the wee bit of brown bread in the base, the white bread on top, and maybe a little bit of a more dense wheaty character on the top of that. But the base of the back third of the palate is that kind of fresh white bready bread crust that we mentioned earlier. You get a little bit of the Jacob's cream cracker as well. You get the wholemeal brown bready sort of thing coming out of the beer, and you can feel that that layer is a little bit more kind of taller and more airy, and it has a wee bit more dryness to it. Then you've got the regular kind of barley malt white bread in there, and you can feel the wheat. That layer is lighter and more airy as well, and taller, and then you can feel the wheaty character just sitting on top there, and the wheat on the back third of your palate just gives you that little bit more kind of bitiness too, which I think is really nice. So, on top of all of that, you start to get the yeasty note on the back third of your palate too. So above everything else, you can feel this dense, sweet, doughy, white bready character in there. It has got a little bit of like a farmhousey, crackery bready character to it, and it feels as if it's wrapped in like a little bit of honeycomb or something like that. And then definitely you can feel that the flavour is taller on that back third of the palate. The further forward, you can feel that flavour is taller, but then as you move into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, I think at that we've covered everything that we need to say about the middle third of your palate, the back third of the palate, and the malty, yeasty side of this beer. Let's go on to the hoppy side of things then. So, green component first, as we always do. In the back corners of the palate then, you've got a little bit of kind of earthiness in there, but not too much. And as you move further forward, you get that kind of deeper, danker, like slightly piney resonance note out of this one. And I think that'll be down to probably the incognito rather than the cryo, I would say. The incognito can give you a little bit of that more deep, dank character there, but as you move further forward, you get a little bit more of a kind of spicy, floral aromaticity coming out of this one. So you're a little bit more spicy, a little bit more kind of floral, and then round the front curve of the tongue, you just get that little bit of a lighter, more grassy sort of thing. There's a wee bit of zestiness in there, but yeah, the way that the beer goes together in that regard is really nice. But you can definitely feel that slightly more oily wetness to the green component in this beer for sure, because of the cryo and the incognito, and I like that about this one. It's very in keeping with the other things going on. But let's look at the front third of the palate then, and the fruitiness in the beer. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up, wee bit of brown bread in the base, the white bread again, and the base of that front third of your palate, you've got the bread crust, you've got a bit of the brown bread, the white bread, and the more dense wheat, and then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So we'll focus on that. At the back of that front third of your palate then, you get that little bit of like sharper, you get that little bit of stronger grapefruit for sure. You also get a little bit of the stronger passion fruit, but also a little bit of peach as well. And this is all coming from the citra, but as you move further forward, you get the juicier passion fruit, the quite ripe mangoes as well. Then as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, it's like apricot underneath, very slight touch of papaya as well, and then there's a wee bit of an oily pineapple sitting on top of that. And then as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's got it's more about the Nelson Sauvignon and the Sabro at this point. So you can feel this sort of, I'm trying to think which way around this is, you can feel that on top of the kind of bready layer you get a little bit of that coconutty sort of thing, which is the Sabro, but then you've got the more oily and dense kind of gooseberry, white green grapey notes of the Nelson Sauvignon, and above that you get just a little bit of the kind of more zesty, oily tangerine note from the Sabro in this case, and it goes together really well, this one. I have to compliment this beer. As I say, the last one I had from these guys was pretty solid, but this is on another level from the other things. So we need to try something else from these guys, I think, before too long has passed. But this is a really, really damn good New England triple IPA, so huge thumbs up to Totopia, and these guys have a bright future ahead of them. Let's just kind of say that. If they can keep doing beers like this, they're going to do pretty damn well, I have to say. So, I don't think there's anything else we really need to say about the flavour of this one. I think we can round off the review with the mouthfeel now. So, for me, generally speaking, this was quite an oily, but still kind of smooth and creamy New England IPA. I would say that this one is kind of top end of mid-bodied bottom end of full-bodied. Carbonation is very smooth. It's got, as I say, oily, mix of oily and creamy character coming out of this one. In terms of IBUs, I want to say it really doesn't feel all that bitter. 30 IBUs with this one would not surprise me, but yet the deepness and dankness makes me wonder if it could be 40 or 50 IBUs, and that's more kind of customary for the triples and the doubles and things like that. So yeah, 30 wouldn't surprise me, but 40 and 50 kind of sits in there as well. So maybe you have to talk about perceived bitterness versus calculated bitterness with this one. But the malt base has a bit of dryness underneath, a lovely little bit of smoothness in the middle, and then the kind of creaminess on top and a wee bit of sweetness. The fruity character in this one is really interesting, as we've said. Lovely balance between the tropical fruits, the kind of oily gooseberry notes from the Nelson Sauvin, and the more citrusy notes of the Sabro in this one as well. But just a very well balanced and really nicely rounded New England triple IPA, and it does feel just that little bit lighter as well. It hides its alcohol very well, and that's kind of in keeping with Japanese craft beer. The Japanese want their beers to be light and drinkable, even when it comes to a bit of an IPA monster such as this one. So yeah, big thumbs up to Totopia Brewery for this one. I think they've done a great job with it. I think that's everything we need to say about this beer, actually, so we can leave it there. This one was the One-Phobia, the first anniversary beer from Totopia Brewery, a New England triple IPA at 10% ABV. These guys are definitely a brewery to watch. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Totopia as well, and we will definitely return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, check out my social media, check out theirs, do check out Liquor Shop Asahiya here in Osaka, and keep an eye on what beers are coming out in Japan, because there's some really good breweries on the rise just now. Until the next time, Slàinte, Skål, cheers, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. Ciao just now.